What's up guys, I'm Zach and welcome back to Workshop Edits and welcome to episode 5 of my tiny office build series in my backyard. In today's episode, we're going to be tackling the entire exterior board and batten and painting of the structure. This was an incredibly challenging task. I hope you guys enjoy it and learn something. Let's go ahead and get started. I need to do a little bit more research on drywalling and I'm not prepared to do it yet. So I'm actually going to switch to finishing the exterior of it, which I'm excited for because then from the outside, it's going to look like it's done. What I landed on was a board and batten style exterior that uses the James Hardie Cement board. In my research, a few things that I learned, which if you're not familiar with that style, here's what I know. It's cement board, which means you need a very specific type of carbide tip saw blade to do it. So I picked up this 7¼ inch blade. So this would fit your circular saw if you have a 7¼ inch circular saw, or it actually has a 5/8 inch arbor, which means it can actually fit my table saw. So if you have a table saw with really good dust collection, which gratefully I do, then you can throw this on your table saw and rip thin strips for it versus having to buy the really expensive pre-cut thin strips to do the actual batten of the board and batten. So I'm going to do that. The other thing I learned is this stuff is cement board and it is no joke for your lungs. So it's very important to wear a mask and other types of protection for it. So I'm definitely going to do that as well. I have some medical grade N95 mask. If you have a respirator, I think that would work really good too. Also, I learned this stuff is super heavy. So I need to cut about 15 to 20 strips that are 2½ inches wide for my battens, then 7 to 10 3½ inch wide strips that are going to be for my trim. So I bought 9 sheets of this 4x8 James Hardie smooth style board and batten. They're like 50 bucks a sheet, so it does add up quickly. But the pre-cut stuff is so expensive. So luckily I do have the tools I need to do all of this work. 7 of them are going to be for paneling. And the only thing to know about doing the board and batten paneling is that you need to cover up the seams. So people tend to do the battens at 12, 16, or 24 inches on center, sort of like whatever they planned out or whatever works aesthetically best. So on the front of the office, it's going to be 24 inches on center because that's going to look the overall like most even and clean. And because it's wider, I think the 24 inches will just look really nice. On the sides, I'm going to do 16 inches on center because that also looks the cleanest in terms of the overall layout. And then on the back, I'm not even going to worry about it because nobody's ever going to see it. So again, this stuff is super heavy. I'm doing it by myself. I think what I'm going to try to do is just see how easy it is to handle this stuff by myself. And if I need to pull in help, that I will. But what I would like to do is get this step out of the way. That way I can transition to just working in the backyard, cutting all of my panels to the exact shape that I need. And then install should be relatively simple with these cement board screws and then finishing nails that I have for the board and batten. Then we can get on to painting. Looks good. Let's give it a test. Okay, the one downside to having a saw stop is that you cannot use blades smaller than 8 inches, meaning I'm gonna have to cut all of these strips by hand. Luckily, I have one of those Craig rip cut jigs, and I think it's gonna work perfectly. It just might be like a little more time consuming, but I'll be able to do everything on the ground. I don't know, slightly annoying, but it's gonna be fine. All right, I have moved to outside. Eye protection, ear protection. Got this medical grade respiratory mask. Doing everything I can to be safe. Got circular saw hooked up to the rip cut. Gonna start by doing the 2½ inch strips. I hope this goes smoothly. I've got my board on the end of my grass. I'm basically just trying to protect my grass as much as possible. This stuff is gonna get messy, and if it all lands on the dirt, I can just dust blow it back into a corner, and it's out of sight, out of mind. So safety first, trying to keep this clean. Hopefully this goes smooth. I forgot that circular saws actually cut better if you cut the piece upside down so that all of the fraying will happen on the back end and the cut is clean on the bottom. So I just flipped over the piece and I'm going to do the remainder of the cuts that way. That was surprisingly easy. That blade cut through that stuff like butter, but super messy. Definitely wear your protective gear when you're doing that stuff. So I've set all of those strips aside. I ended up cutting 15 2.5-inch wide ones, which I think is sufficient for my build, and 10 3.5-inch wide ones, which will encompass all of the window and door trim as well as the base trim. I think just having the slightly different widths will accent things a little bit better. So I'm going to turn my attention to doing the boards. Now, I sketched out everything here and I actually designed it in Illustrator so I know how my panels all will lay out. This stuff is really heavy. I'm going to basically do the exact same thing that I just did, which is use the rip cut and my circular saw to make the cuts. I'm just going to do things one at a time, hanging the panels one at a time, and ultimately just see how this goes. Might have to pull in help again based on the weight. Using these rock-on fasteners specifically for cement board, and they're coated so they'll work for exterior. I'm going to use them for the actual boards, and then for the battens I have some 12 or 14 gauge nails that once you paint over them, like, you're not even going to see them. So we're just going to get to it one panel at a time. That was a really tricky piece. Trigonometry finally paid off. I think this might be my least favorite part of the project. So heavy, so dusty, very complicated to work with. I do have everything hung except the pieces in the back, which I care the least about. I want to move on to doing the trim. So for the bottom and the borders around the window and the door, I am doing 3-inch pieces that I cut. For the battens and the corner pieces and the top stretchers, I did 2.5-inch pieces. I'm going to start at the bottom next to the door to keep everything even and level, and then work my way around the bottom perimeter, around the windows and the door, then move on to the battens. And I'm going to be using nails for this instead of screws, and hopefully I get better as I go putting these things in, because then I can just touch those up with paint and it'll be super easy to hide them. First piece, the plan, once this is done, is to do a deck. Small deck that comes off. And I think that deck is going to be very simple. It's just going to start right at the bottom of this door. Therefore, I want this trim piece to be maybe just like 1/4 of an inch lower than that. And then I will evenly do that around the entire base. It's kind of my jumping off point. That's at least the thinking. I don't know if there's a right way or a wrong way. 3¼ inches. That's gonna be my top reference point. Then I'm just gonna make it level all the way around. I want to take a minute to actually explain what I'm doing because I haven't probably done a good job at that. So I'm doing a modern farmhouse board and batten siding look for this office. That style is coming back. I think it's really clean looking. I think as kind of a DIY beginner with this type of project, it's actually a really good way to hide some of your mistakes that probably aren't noticeable on camera. Board and batten is really just a two-part finish. It is the board, which is the overall back wall piece, and then the batten, which is a thinner strip of trim that goes over that board, and it's used specifically to create a pattern that will both hide any of the seams in your boards and just complete the overall look of your project. Now, in the old days when board and batten first started, it was usually done with 8 or 12-inch boards and then thinner 2 to 3-inch battens, and you had a nice repeated pattern, and that type of facade holds up really good long-term if you paint it and maintain it. Modern day technology, there are metal siding products, vinyl, there are smart siding products, or there is, in my case, cement board. So this is James Hardie Cement board. It comes in smooth or wood, cedar texture and patterns. I went with the smooth version of it. It comes in really heavy 4x8 sheets. So this part of the project has been incredibly taxing on my body to actually complete as a solo person doing the project. For the battens, you can really do whatever you want. You can custom create the widths that you want. In my case, I created 2.5-inch and 3.5-inch width ones from bigger pieces of board. You can buy them prefabricated. Sometimes they are thicker products. So if you want more contrast between the board and the batten, you have that available to you. It does get pricey the thicker the material you get, both from like an overall depth and a width. But if you have kind of the tools and the capabilities to create your own, it's definitely cheaper to do. I think the most important thing that I learned when doing this is that it is all about figuring out the layout that you want and knowing where to start. So if you are doing a 12-inch on center or a 16-inch on center, you usually want to start from the middle and work outwards so that your overall aesthetic starts in the middle and is even working outwards, and that's usually what you do. In my case, I am going with a 24-inch on center board and batten look, and this wall is exactly 10 feet wide, so it actually meant that I could just start from this wall and work all the way over and have battens every 24 inches ending over here and having a nice even pattern. If I didn't have that, I would start from where I wanted in the middle and work my way outwards. Again, the overall goal is to have a nice, clean, even look, have all of the seams covered, and that's what gives you that really nice, complete look to where you don't even know where a board underneath one of the battens starts and stops. I've got all of the walls up now, so I've started moving on to doing the trim. In order to fasten the trim, I'm just using some galvanized exterior rated side nails for it so they'll hold up to weather, and once you paint over it, you're not really even gonna see them unless you're up close. And this is how you complete the batten look. So the next steps are finish the trim. I'm going to prefabricate all my corners. I read that that was a really good thing to do so that you can just slap them in place as one and fasten them versus trying to get one in place and then match up the corner. That seems like a really good tip, so I'm gonna run with that. And then I'm just gonna go piece by piece and round out the rest of the trim on the project, as well as get all of my battens in place. Making those corners ahead of time was the best thing I could have possibly done. That was super easy. I am finally done with the siding and the trim. That was so difficult, and I don't know if it's because I'm a beginner or what, but That just took forever. I mean, that probably took like 15 hours. Just difficult, and I guess I went slow and wanted to be precise. But we're done. Now I am going to move on to caulking and sealing all of the joints. I got this really cool electric caulking gun from Ryobi. It was like 80 bucks. I've already used it for a couple of things. It is like the greatest thing ever. So I'm hoping this goes really quickly. Gonna let that dry overnight, and then we can paint and be freaking done with the outside of this thing. All done, ready for paint. You know when you think you have great momentum and then you get ready to paint and realize you spent an hour and a half using non-paintable caulk for the exterior of your house, and then you have to spend 3.5 hours removing all of that, and then another hour reapplying it? That just happened. But it has been fixed. We are ready to paint. Let us paint. Now, if you are watching these in real time, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel so that you can be around and be notified when the next video in this series comes out. If you are watching these later on, I will have a playlist linked to every video that is launched right here, as well as the next episode in the series right here. If you have any questions about this project, materials, process, some stumblings that I went through, or you just want to generally understand where I got some of my information from so that you can combine it with this video and do your own research, please feel free to leave a comment, and like always, I would be more than happy to respond and give you as much information as I can. I'll see you guys next time on whatever it is that I'm building. Bye.